Most of us get our Thanksgiving dinners from the grocery these days, but that wasn't always the case. Before the advent of modern refrigeration, holiday meals were usually living in the woods or the farmyard until the day of the feast. Sometimes this resulted in Thanksgiving dinners making a break for it. Here are several stories from such occasions. On Friday, November 26, 1920, the Atlanta Constitution reported that a Thanksgiving possum hunt by boys at Inman Park terminated in a manner disappointing to the boys when neighbors summoned the fire department to avert the destruction of a venerable hollow oak tree in imminent danger of being burned by the smudge which the boys had set to smoke out Brer Possum, and which a brisk wind whipped into a blaze over which the lads quickly lost control. Brer Possum escaped in the shuffle, and the lads ruefully returned to their homes. Firemen related a similar occurrence Thanksgiving Day a year ago. The Morning News of Wilmington, Delaware, wrote on Saturday, November 29, 1890, that early on Thursday morning, a man came along the north side of 8th Street going east. He had under one arm a live and very frisky raccoon, which he had evidently intended should take the place of a Thanksgiving turkey. Be that as it may, just as he was about to cross Shipley Street, he lost his grip on the coon, which suddenly sprang to the ground. When the prospective coon-eater gathered his wits, he found that his dinner had climbed to the top of a maple tree. Quick as a flash, he mounted that tree. The higher he climbed, the further out did the coon climb. The branches bent under the weight of the anxious coon chaser. Thomas J. Goslip, on whose pavement the tree stands, opened a window of his house and ordered the man down, as he was afraid that the old tree would break and the man would be hurt. The man came down at once. He was disgusted and told the gathering crowd of people that the one who caught the coon could have it. By this time, the coon had crossed to a tree on the pavement of St. Andrew's Church and settled down on the outer end of a limb to await developments. Then it was that a burly man started to make chase. The crowd, which had increased to 200 persons, cheered and jeered as the burly man climbed. "I'll shake him down," he said, "and the feller what catches him will please hold him for me." The crowd agreed to do that, and kept up their jokes. After a vigorous shaking of the limbs, the coon dropped to the sidewalk. The crowd parted to give the little animal a chance. He took it, and darted up 8th Street towards Orange. The crowd started after him, and he was soon captured and taken back to the man who had dislodged him. The happy man seized the coon by the tail and started toward Whitechapel, followed by the crowd. On December 5, 1914, the Lincoln Star reported that yesterday morning, 2 ducks belonging to Mrs. Ongmacht, living at Nebraska City, returned to their quarters in the chicken house after what had evidently been a week's vacation taken to avoid being served up for a Thanksgiving dinner. Mrs. Ongmacht sold the ducks to John Franks a day or two before Thanksgiving and was to deliver them a little later. The morning after the sale, she discovered the chicken house door open and 2 ducks and 6 chickens missing. No trace of the fowls was found until the ducks returned Thursday morning. The 6 chickens have not yet put in their appearance. On Tuesday, August 10, 1943, the Wilkes-Barre Record reported that 1,000 Thanksgiving dinners were on the loose in a Des Moines suburb today. That many 10-week-old pheasants answered the call of the wild and flew out of the rearing pens at the L.E. Hefner hatchery. Attempts to drive the birds back into their pens met with little success. Hefner said due to wartime shortages, he had been unable to cover the pens with chicken wire. He had clipped the birds' wings once, but they grew out sooner than he had anticipated. Hefner was growing the birds for the holiday trade. The Thanksgiving dinner familiar to most of us has also managed some last-minute jailbreaks over the years. Here's some stories of turkeys that flew the coop. The first story I found was a sad tale from the Tuesday, November 30th edition of the Morning Call in 1897. Dr. George Sieberling had an immense turkey gobbler, which, after he found out he had escaped the Thanksgiving Day axe, went and committed suicide on Friday. This is perhaps the only case on record where a gobbler's pride was so wounded after seeing many of his brothers chosen for the feast and himself left that he went and ended his existence. The doctor had invited his parents and the parents of his wife to spend Thanksgiving Day at his home. The parents, however, found it impossible to be here upon that day, and it was decided that the gobbler's life should be prolonged. His wings were clipped, and then he was allowed to be king of all he surveyed in the backyard. But the gobbler's heart was sore, and for want of company he pined. Looking through openings in the fence, he spied others of his tribe, and on Friday he decided to join them. He managed to get up on the fence, but must have lost his balance between two palings protruding on one side, and the body went down up the other, and there, suspended from the fence, the doctor's gobbler ended his days. The second story is of what was possibly the largest turkey jailbreak in Thanksgiving history. The Chicago Tribune published the story on Wednesday, November 27, 1901. Scattered through the woods in North Evanston, 100 turkeys, destined for Thanksgiving tables, are enjoying liberty through the grace of a team of restless horses. The turkeys were the property of Jacob Nellis, who has a large poultry farm a few miles from the town, and whose birds are farmed for their size and fatness. Nellis placed his turkeys in coops, loaded the coops on a wagon, and started for Evanston with them yesterday afternoon. At North Evanston, when he left the wagon to get a drink, the team became frightened and ran away. The wagon was overturned, the frail coops broken from the force of the fall, and the turkeys fled to the shelter of the trees which lined the road. The sun was going down, and in the darkness, the turkeys proved exasperatingly elusive. Nellis gave up the attempt to capture them and returned home, resolved to try again today. The Delaware County Daily Times of Chester, Pennsylvania, ran the following story on Tuesday, November 28, 1911. It is seldom that residents of this section of the state get an opportunity to go hunting for turkeys, except when the hunt takes them to the stores. On the Ralston property was a fine turkey, which was growing steadily fatter as Thanksgiving Day drew near, and the owners were already smacking their lips over the quantity of white and dark meat he would provide, when the turkey, evidently knowing what was in store for him, escaped from the farm. For a week he did not return, and then an organized hunt was made for him. In a clump of woods quite a distance from the farm, the gobbler was discovered, and the pursuit began. But every effort to get close to the bird was in vain, the wily bird baffling all their attempts. The owner finally went for a shotgun, and a charge of shot brought the bird to an untimely end. The Pantagraph of Bloomington, Illinois, reported a strange incident on Wednesday, November 25, 1914. A bunch of live turkeys had been cooped up in the rear of the Schneider Meat Market, and yesterday morning employees of the place proceeded to dress them. In the scrimmage, one of the largest of the birds escaped into the open. Using his long-neglected power of flight, he soared out over the street and up to the top of the fair building opposite. There he alighted and sat in serenity. The question of how to get him down seemed at first a serious one, but soon someone suggested to a group of men in the nearby gun store the practical idea of sniping the bird. No sooner said than done, and in a minute there was the short crack of a rifle shot ringing out over West Front Street, and his birdship came tumbling to earth. His demise was quick and painless, and a good Thanksgiving dinner was saved to someone. The incident attracted considerable attention in the vicinity. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed this story. For more like it, head on over to theweeklyholler.com and sign up for our free email newsletter. The Weekly Holler wishes you and yours a happy Thanksgiving. May your turkeys stay put and your hams never wander.